And I'm back with more Apollo justice. And Kristoph Gavin is about to take the stand. Oh dear. Court will now reconvene. Defense attorney Kristoph Gavin, will you please take the stand? Oh, he looks very pleased to do this. Now then, if you would, Mr. Payne. Yes, Your Honor. Will the witness state his name and occupation? Is this farce necessary, Your Honor? Believe me, far stranger things have gone on in this courtroom. Fine, I'll play along. First, there's one thing we need to have made clear. How did you know about the secret beneath the victim's hat? By secret, I'm guessing he means the fact that he was bald? Forgive my curiosity, but what is it about this fellow's head? Your Honor seems to have an inordinate interest.
Objection!
Oh! Uh-oh. I wouldn't call it inordinate, Mr. Gavin. Mr. Wright? What do you think you're doing, Wright? Things sure look different from the other side. Know what I mean, Apollo? Speaking of looking from the other side, let's consider something for a second. The victim wore that hat all night, never once taking it off, except that one time. That one time. The instance he was hit! Oh? When Mr. Wright returned from reporting the crime scene, the hat was lying on the floor. Mr. Wright picked it up and placed it on the victim's head. In other words, in order to have seen Mr. Smith's head, or bald head, you had to have been there in the hideout at the time of the crime. In other words, I must be the real killer, is what you're trying to say. Not bad, Apollo. Mr. Gavin? I'm afraid I haven't been entirely honest with the court. What? Oh, I assure you, I had the noblest of intentions. I did it all to protect my client, Mr. Wright. Yet, I'm afraid in the current situation, I see little reason to hide anything. Very well. Allow me to tell you the truth of what happened that night. Finally, you may begin your testimony. Tell us, how were you involved in the events of that fateful night? The rage I sensed in the man that night troubled me, so I returned to the club. I went down to the basement and peeked through that little window into the hideout. It must have been right after the murder took place. The victim was dead, as he appears in the photo. A bald head, an unconscious girl, and Wright, holding a bottle in his hand. I sensed that was not the best place for me to be at the time, so I left. That's when the call came. So, you witnessed the murder? For better or for worse, I missed the actual moment of the deed. Mr. Gavin, may I remind you that you're on his defense tape. Your testimony is clearly disadvantageous to your client. What else could I say? I'm standing on the witness stand, after all. So you are, Mr. Gavin. Huh? And you were to testify just as you did. You were to tell them you saw the crime scene through that little window. Mr. Wright? You had to say that. Because that was the only probable window of opportunity. Right, Apollo? Huh? Mr. Wright, the defense should do the cross-examination, not the defendant. Mr. Justice, are you prepared? Yes, Your Honor. I can't believe I'm gonna go up against Mr. Gavin. This trial's just getting weirder and weirder. God, this music is fun. Those were the only 3 at the crime? Yes. As far as I saw, at least. Then we're back to where we started. The killer was the defendant, Phoenix Wright. Who else could it have been? But why didn't you talk to the police? 2 reasons. First, I didn't actually witness the very moment of the crime. Second, my office was asked to defend him. Even after seeing what I'd seen, I couldn't abandon my friend.
Objection!
There must have been someone else there at the moment of the crime. Justice, I just said I saw no one. Not a soul. But that goes against what Mr. Wright said. Yes, this mysterious 4th person. Who would conveniently be the real killer, I suppose. Glad to see we agree, Mr. Gavin. Let me pose a question, then. Tell me, what possible reason did the real killer have to swap cards in the victim's hand? Huh? Perhaps you could show us a reason why such a thing would be necessary. How can I show something I can't find myself? Remember, Apollo, the card that was swapped out was the 5th ace. The 5th ace. Right. Well, Mr. Justice, the question is why the killer would swap out a card has been raised. Can you point to a reason? It's now or never. The defense would like to present evidence to the court. Evidence showing the reason why a card was swapped out. Huh? And go ahead and point out your reason. Why did the killer take the 5th ace?
Take that!
My reason is this. Is that an ace? Why, it's got blood on it. Right next to the spade. What? This is insane. Why wasn't I told about this? Why? Could this be the missing 5th ace? Inconceivable. How could you? What are you doing with that card? Well, that's the thing. Why is he so upset? It's just a fishy card from some fishy girl. Oh, that card? It's mine. That is, I picked it up from the Borscht Bowl Club that night after the murder occurred. I gave it to my daughter. Cards are her stock in trade.
Objection!
No! That's impossible! It's unacceptable! The court can't accept this as evidence. It's a fraud! A fraud? How can you be so sure? What? I would think the only person who could claim it was a fraud would be the one who took the real card from the crime scene. The real killer. Allow me to elaborate. What if this trace of blood was the reason? The reason for the killer to take the card from the scene of the crime? Where are you going with all this? Take another look at the photo, and at the victim's hand. Or at the victim's head. At the moment of the crime, his hat hit the floor, and a trickle of blood ran from his forehead down to the back of his head. Couldn't a drop of that blood have fallen on one of the cards? Well, I suppose. The killer took that card to hide.
Objection!
Regardless, that evidence is non-permissible. Oh? Right. Regardless of how you wasted the last 7 years, you used to be a lawyer. You know what a serious crime it is to conceal as evidence. We can discuss the finer points of our legal system later. What's important now is I've answered your question. What are you talking about? You wanted to know why the killer would have taken a card from the crime scene. And now I've told you. That one drop of blood would have been decisive evidence.
Objection!
This is baseless conjecture. It's baseless.
Objection!
Oh, he did the thing. Oh, I assure you it's quite based. What? It's amazing, really, how a single drop of blood on a single card can lead us to the truth. It's quite simple. Well, Apollo? Yes? Try picturing the scene of the crime. Picture it in your head. Ooh, fancy. The murder took place in the hideout. The body of the luckless victim was found at the poker table. And before the killer swapped the card out, there was a single card with a drop of blood on the victim's hand. Given this, there's one decisive problem with the scene. Well, what is it? Let's keep it simple, shall we? Given that there was a drop of blood on the card, whose position in this diagram doesn't fit? The victims, the killers, the witnesses, or the second witnesses? Ah, shit. Here we go.
Take that!
Well, isn't it the victim's position the problem? I don't follow your logic here. Well, look. The victim was struck in the head, sending him back in his chair. You'd think any blood would fall behind the body, not into the table in front. Take a look at that photo again. If he bled in this position, the blood wouldn't fall on the floor, not on any of the cards. Well, that's right, so what does that mean? Incidentally, we were sitting in swivel chairs. Oh, man. Try turning the chair around. Okay. The chair was facing the other way? It would have to be. So we have to assume at the time of the murder, the victim's chair was facing away from the table. When Mr. Wright returned from informing the police, which way was the chair facing? When I came back to the room where the body was seen, as in the photo. That would mean the killer turned the chair back around. Let's take the next step. Let's look at the diagram once more. We now know that the victim was facing away from the table at the time of the murder. But this creates another significant contradiction. Again? Let's test your reasoning skills, shall we? Whose location in the diagram conflicts and contradicts our new understanding of the crime? The victim was struck from the front, correct? Indeed. Well, wouldn't it be kind of hard to hit him from the front? Sitting where his indicator is? I would think it'd be quite hard, yeah. Yes, but what you're saying makes no sense. Why would the victim suddenly turn to face the wall in the middle of a game? I believe a sufficient reason will soon come to light. What? There's something in this diagram that makes far less sense, actually. Look again at the diagram. If the victim was struck while he was standing here, where would his assailant be standing? But there's no room to put a mark where the killer should be. Don't worry. Let's think it through and see what we find. We know the victim was facing toward the wall. It's the only thing we know for sure. Try to forget about everything else.
Take that!
The killer had to be standing... What? You get points for flair, but that's all you get. I thought I was onto something here, too. I hardly need to point out that standing there would be impossible. The victim is facing a solid cupboard. Or are you claiming the killer climbed the cupboard and hit him from above? Bah! It's simple logic, really. If this was the only place the killer could have been standing, then that means at the very moment of the crime... Wait, I know! The cupboard wasn't there! What's this now? I mean, that's the only explanation, right, Mr. Gavin? Your Honor, I have a suggestion for the defense. We should arrange to examine the cupboard and the hideout immediately. Bailiff, send a team to the crime scene immediately. Have them try to move the cupboard. Your Honor? What? There's one more thing your men should look for. Please give this to the bailiff. Yes, I see. You do belong in the courtroom after all. I do my best. But let's forge ahead while we wait. Look at the diagram once again. It's been changed. If the killer was standing here at the time of the crime, then this cupboard wasn't here, which means... Apollo, try moving it. Thank you. As you can see, the cupboard was the problem. At the time of the murder, it has to have been as shown here. Now everything's in place to reconstruct the moment of the crime. Oh my. What's this? What is it now? Look at the diagram of the crime scene once more. It appears we found yet another contradiction. What I believe to be the final contradiction, in fact. Oh, dang! Notice something? Our line of deduction is rapidly approaching its logical conclusion. Now then, Mr. Justice, point out this new contradiction. Is it the victim, the killer, the witness, or the second witness? Witness? Witness. There is no such thing as witness. I'm dumb.
Take that!
Second witness, what the fuck? About this cupboard. Are we all okay in assuming it was moved? Yeah, sure, why not? Well, if it was, something doesn't fit. The cupboard would have completely covered up the window to the stairs. That's right. Someone standing outside wouldn't have been able to see it. Someone like Mr. Gavin. What did you say? Oh, is the coolest defense in the West losing his cool? Don't expect me to play along with your little game, right? It's only a game until someone gets killed, Mr. Gavin. And someone was, while the window to that room was blocked by a cupboard. So, perhaps you'd like to explain to the court exactly where did the witness of the crime scene come from? Where did you witness it from? Excuse me! This is a court of law and I will have order! We just received word from our investigation team. They've examined the cupboard in the hideout. Oh? What did they find out? Well, it turns out there is a secret passage. What? Yes. I believe something of this. I mentioned something of the sort before. This is one of the tricks the many our regulars know about. I do remember them saying something about it now he mentions it. A secret passage is a handy thing to have when you're engaged in illegal goings-on. You never know when you might need to duck away from the eyes of the law. So the room is a secret passage? Where does it go? The other side connects to the restaurant above. The underworld bosses could get away from the cops and enjoy a cold bowl of borscht, no doubt. Just like our killer. Oh boy. You see where our line of simple deductive reasoning has led us? I see it, but I don't believe it. That girl wasn't kidding when she said I needed this trump card for the last hand. At the time of the murder, the window was blocked on the victim's hat. It was only off his head for a few minutes. Between his murder and Mr. Wright calling the cops. In other words, the only place anyone could have seen the victim's bald head was from inside the hideout. Well, Mr. Gavin? Come on, say something. Dare I ask what really happened that night? Actually, I think we could probably figure it out ourselves at this point. That night, for whatever reason, our killer had a date with Mr. Smith. A date with destiny. There he crouched, hidden in the secret passageway behind the cupboard, holding his breath, waiting for just the right moment. And then the chance came, and he took it. What? Why'd you do that? Wait, I'll get help! Miss Olga Orley was out cold, struck by Mr. Smith. But his time was soon to come. Mr. Wright was upstairs to call the cops, leaving Mr. Shady Smith alone in the hideout with an unconscious dealer. Then our killer stepped out from the secret passage into the hideout. The victim must have heard the cupboard sliding aside. He wheeled his chair around to look, and then, after the deed was done, the criminal must have seen the blood on the card. He would have, of course, realized the need to destroy it. That single spot of blood told the whole story of the crime. Too bad for him he didn't linger any longer in the hideout. If he had, he might have noticed the cards on the floor. And the fact that they were all red. Well, it seems this trial has taken yet another turn. I'm truly, truly sorry I had to see this day come, Mr. Gavin. Mr. Gavin? Mr. Payne! Yes, Your Honor. The prosecution will continue its investigation. And as for Mr. Phoenix Wright, the defendant is hereby cleared of all suspicion. Believe me when I say I don't believe this is happening. But I'm afraid circumstances call me to issue a warrant for your arrest immediately.
Objection!
Huh? Oh, there's no need to apologize. I rather enjoyed myself. It's not every day you get to witness a legendary attorney's dirty tactics firsthand. Your point, Mr. Gavin? Frankly, Your Honor, I'm shocked that a person of your caliber would be taken in by such a low-grade parlor trick. Excuse me? The defendant is cleared of all suspicion? This is hardly the time for jokes. Mr. Wright doesn't prove anyone's guilt or innocence here. What he has done is use illegal evidence to put the blame on someone else. And not just anyone else, but me, his own defense attorney. Illegal evidence?
Objection!
Let me ask you, is there still any reason at present to suspect me of wrongdoing? Of course. This bottle, for instance. The bottle of grape juice he was drinking. How do you intend to explain away the fingerprints on the murder weapon? And not just any fingerprints. Am I right, Mr. Payne? Actually, yes. The fingerprints on the bottle were upside down. I seem to recall them being an issue earlier. The court, and this case, demand an explanation. I can think of only one reason why one would hold a bottle upside down. And that is to hit someone with the bottom of the bottle. Well, Your Honor. See how the caught fish squirms to the last? Well, Apollo? Yes? Your boss seems awfully concerned about this bottle still. But I'm sure you can come up with a suitable explanation just like that. Yeah, just like what? Why would anyone grab a bottle upside down other than to... Don't let him trick you into thinking that his explanation is the only legitimate one. Is there really another? Take another look at the court record. I believe you'll find a simple answer there, in plain sight. How about you just say the answer in plain words? It would be hasty to deliver a verdict with unanswered questions, indeed. Well, Mr. Justice, Mr. Gavin said that the court in this case demanded an explanation. Don't worry. Justice won't leave until justice is done. Perhaps the defense would care to enlighten the court. What evidence do you have to explain why the fingerprints of the bottle were upside down?
Take that!
It's actually easier to show you than explain. Place that bottle on the floor next to your chair. Excuse me. On the floor? Yes. Now reach down to pick it up. Without getting out of your chair. Huh? See? You naturally go up to pick the bottle by its neck. With your fingers upside down. Look at this photograph taken of the night of the murder. The defendant, Mr. Wright, sat there, playing piano, bottles of grape juice on the floor, to the side of the piano bench. You naturally pick up the bottles upside down several times. I can't believe it's that simple. Recall our dinner that evening. I was drinking my usual juice then, too. Basically used the bottle on the table for your deed. But then you must have remembered. She went to pick up one of the bottles from under the piano. And you switched the bottles. You took one of Mr. Wright's bottles and made it look like the murder weapon. Order! 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 What have you to say to these charges, Mr. Gavin? Fascinating. So this is the legendary attorney's famed tactic of misdirection. What? You claim I switched the bottle? Where's your proof? Proof? As I thought. More baseless conjecture. I'm afraid your bottle of proof is quite
Objection!
I wouldn't be so sure about that. Your Honor, when you initiated the investigation, you recall I requested an additional investigation? Yes, I have your memo about it right here. Retrieve the bottles from under the piano at the Borscht Club. And here's one of the bottles in question. What are you going to do? Dust that for fingerprints too? I wouldn't be surprised if any were on this but his. He probably wouldn't make such a novice mistake, true. That bottle won't bear a trace of anything. Say, Apollo, why don't you go ahead and examine that bottle? But why? Just humor me. Mr. Wright, that bottle will solve this case once and for all. What? That's some bottle. Oh. There's something inside the bottle. What's this? That card? It can't be! Recall that unpleasant woman's testimony for a moment. Yes, our little swindling Devotchka. Wait, this isn't... You're telling me this is the planted card you disposed of? The one you mentioned in this piece of testimony? The Five of Hearts. This is the card. The bottles were swapped, And the only one who could have done that was the fourth person in the club that night. You, Mr. Kristoph Gavin. Ah, that is a very subdued breakdown for this franchise. That is all. Is this your idea of revenge, Phoenix Wright? Revenge? Revenge for the events that took away your attorney's badge 7 years ago? My past is like my logic. Straight and true. Nothing's changed. All I did was point the finger of justice in the proper direction. Fine. I'm glad we could have this little tete-a-tete, right? This is insane! What about me? Don't I get to prosecute anyone? No. No, you don't. I believe the time has finally come for the end of this trial. Mr. Payne, do you have a report on us for Mr. Gavin? He's admitted everything. We're processing his arrest now. I see. Still, one would have to wonder why he would do such a thing. He didn't even have a connection to the victim, did he? None that we know of. Mr. Wright, have anything to add? I'm afraid I can't shed any more light on the matter. About this victim, his occupation was listed as traveler. An odd profession, to be sure, and that's all we know about him. I'll arrange for a follow-up investigation, Your Honor. Good. Mr. Wright? Yes? 7 years, and you still haven't lost your touch. Kristoph Gavin was a man with much significance for me, both as a friend and a lawyer. He was extremely talented, to be sure. I needed two things before I could confront him. The first was a place where no injustice would be tolerated. This courtroom. The second was a man who would tolerate no injustice. In other words, a defense attorney. You, Apollo. Me? This is a dark time for our legal system. A twisting of justice brought about by our own initial trial system. We have to set it right. Mr. Wright. Our work lies ahead of us, and I, for one, am looking forward to it. Well, this seems like a good time to announce the verdict. The court finds the defendant, Mr. Phoenix Wright, not guilty! It's been a while since I was able to say that. Court is adjourned. Thanks, Apollo. You came through just like I thought you would. I'm pretty sure I didn't do a thing in there. It was you who cornered the killer. I couldn't have done it by myself. You sensed it too today, didn't you? Your ability? Ability? Yes. A sensitivity I lack. You'll come to understand it soon enough. Wait, I wonder if he would mean... Wait, what was that, Mr. Wright? You'll have to find out the answer to that question yourself. The answer? Right. Today was full of questions without answers. Most of them about Mr. Gavin. What possible reason could he have to commit murder? What possible reason could he have to commit murder? Perhaps you'll learn that in the days to come. Wait, you don't know, do you? This locket is the key. Oh, that reminds me. I met the girl whose picture's in your locket. Your daughter, right? That's right. She's my daughter. You know, you were right about this locket. Huh? I took it off his neck the night he died. But it looks like our dear Russian scam artist saw me. So the truth is, this locket really did belong to him. Wait, but that's perjury! You testified! You said that locket was yours! I said no such thing. Huh? I merely said it was a locket with my daughter's picture inside. A subtle distinction, but a distinction nonetheless. And it's the truth. Wait, but then why? Why was the victim wearing a locket with a picture of your daughter inside it? Sometimes the straightest path to truth isn't the best one. Give it time. You're still just getting started with your career. Speaking of which, I may be out of a job. Out of a job? I work for Gavin law offices after a while. I still can't believe I got him led away in handcuffs. Apollo. Yeah? How about coming to work for me? What? You mean at the Wright & Co. company law offices? I mean, there's not a single attorney in my generation who doesn't know it. I can't imagine that being true, but... Wait, but didn't you're not... Oh, I turned in my badge, yes. I'm not an attorney anymore. That incident 7 years ago. That legendary trial. And in the middle of it all was one man, Phoenix Wright. The case reached its conclusion, or a sad conclusion, and he left law for good. Have you ever thought about coming back? I'm not qualified to stand in a court of law, I'm afraid. Didn't you notice in today's trial there was a single piece of forged evidence? Forged evidence? Wait, what are you talking about? I'm talking about evidence that shouldn't have existed. A naughty magician's trick. Huh. It did speak as odd. It seemed too perfect. I'll bet this was it.
Take that!
You mean this? Don't you? I got it from your daughter. Yeah. That card couldn't have been found at the crime scene. Because the killer took it with him when he left, leaving the wrong card in its place. Luckily for us. My verdict was already handed down 7 years ago. Then you really... Yeah, I forged it. One look at the crime scene should have told you it wasn't real. But you can't do something like that and call yourself an attorney. Who's calling themselves an attorney? So it's true. The rumor is true. 7 years ago. None of that matters much now, does it? Ooh! I punched him. It's your story from here on out. Perhaps I can help you turn the next page. My office's address. Drop in if you like. Mr. Wright. Oh, about your uppercut. Try yelling, "Take that!" next time. I feel it packs a little more punch. And thanks for today. I had a good time. And with that, Mr. Wright walked out the door. And that's how my first trial ended. A lot of mysteries went unsolved. And at the time, I had no idea they were all related. Every mystery that day, connected by a single thread of logic. I'll find that out soon enough. My name is Apollo Justice, attorney at law, and this is how my story begins. Whew. Ooh, boy. Yeah. Gotta love it. Okay. First case is done. We'll start then second case. Turnabout Corner, I believe it's called. Let me check just in case. Turnabout Corner. Yes, the second case. And Apollo will get his own assistant, and I can probably guess what people will assume that the assistant's going to be. It's not hard to guess. But I'm happy to be doing this, and we'll be going through all the cases. Apollo Justice, Dual Destinies, Spirit of Justice. All of it. And we'll continue next time.